What's up, everybody? My name is Nick, joined again by my co-host Matt, and our special guest for today, FlashPicks Paul. I don't know about that intro. I gotta get out of the way. That was 30 seconds. It's just too long. That could be done in 5 or 10 seconds. Nonetheless, Paul, thank you for joining us today. Excited to join us. Paul is British, to give everybody a heads up, so we're going to try to insert some subtitles. But I've also talked to Paul on the side, hey, slow it down a little bit, enunciate, but we're on the same page. We're good. Right, Paul?
Yeah.
We're good.
All good, yeah. I'm going to do my best to call soccer, and football, and we'll be okay.
Those are the house rules. That's all you need to know, honestly. Say anything you want about Matt, just call soccer, and football. Paul, you're a little bit new to the gambling Twitter scene and just, the U.S. side altogether. Why don't you give us a little bit of background? Because you used to work for the books. You're from England. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so I've been gambling since the age of 8. No, I'm kidding. I grew up in sort of town in between Manchester and Liverpool, are probably the sort of big cities that you will be familiar with. So a big sort of soccer hotbed, and that was my main passion growing up was soccer. And as I sort of grew older and became more interested in gambling, that was my sport of interest. And I knew straight from college that I wanted to get into the gambling space, in a trading role or bookmaker or odds maker, as you would probably call it in the States. So I got a job working with my local bookmaker, then moved to a slightly bigger, more regional firm, and then ended up at Sky Bet, which is one of the bigger books here in the UK. They're part of the same group that own FanDuel, Flutter Group, who you'd be familiar with from obviously the size that they are in the US. So most of my experience came working for Sky Bet, initially in soccer, and then last 8 years or so more with a US sports focus. So a lot of NFL, and then a bit of MLB as well during the sort of summer months when the NFL's quieting down for the off season.
Yeah, it's a little weird over there because you guys have had it for quite a while. I mean, we had companies like Bovado that were offshore, but now it's becoming legalized over here. So it's kind of interesting that you already knew when you're in college and before that you're ready to go into these local companies and be able to get jobs there, because it's kind of just opening up state to state. But it's kind of awesome. That's just the world we live in, and we're kind of just transitioning into that normal, everyday, every state kind of situation.
Yeah. I just first of all noticed 2 things. 1, he used to work for the books. 2, he's from England. That's a double bad guy. You gotta kind of get on the good side over here, which I guess is FlashPicks now. But yeah, you worked for Sky Bet. Tell us more about that and being on the book side. I know you did some odds compiling over there, some risk management stuff. From that point of view, I think a lot of people in at least America and on the public side, they don't really understand what the book is technically trying to do. So if you could kind of walk us through that mindset, I think that'd be really great for the audience.
Yeah, no problem. I think traditionally the European books have operated quite differently to the US sort of Vegas or offshore books. So the more traditional big Vegas firms or offshore US firms will literally look to offer low juice, very balanced book, high hold, and try and sort of win regardless of result or have small positions either side. Whereas the European model is a lot more taking positions at the right price, I guess. So there's a lot more things like horse racing betting, where there's big priced selections within books that are popular, and bookmakers will often have a much bigger liability position. So it is a different model, and it will probably start coming into the US with the likes of DraftKings and FanDuel having heavy sort of Euro, more traditional background to their sort of business makeup. But yeah, certainly with Sky Bet, we were very recreational end of the market. It was people trying to stake small amounts, £5, £10 to win £200, £500. Very different to the sort of US culture of laying 55 to win 50 or 110 to win 100. It's completely different mindset. It's more of the sort of same game parlay or like multi-leg parlays, big teasers with large sort of returns available on them. That was the audience that we were sort of catering to. So we would have weeks where we would have huge losses if most of the favourites in the EPL and Spanish La Liga all won. Obviously, with soccer being the big sport. But generally, if you get one or two draws across the sort of big favourites or a couple of them getting beat, you would know that you would get a really strong hold that week. It wasn't the same as necessarily the sort of US books where very rarely does it go more than sort of 75-25 in terms of a ticket split or a stake split on either side. And they are trying to balance the book and sort of set the correct line.
Yeah, so they're doing a lot of lottery tickets, basically, is what you were saying. It's just put your $5 in, try to win the lottery, but you pick the sport instead. So nothing wrong with that for a casual fun bettor, but as far as long-term profit, probably not the best. So it isn't.
Yeah.
So I know one thing we talked about in our previous conversations, and one thing that we like to educate people all the time. So plus EV bets. I know that's something we talked about as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what those are for people that don't understand? Really, because I know you've had to explain it so many times for the European market. And even I just think of casual bettors. They have no idea that there's stuff that even exists, what that even means, anything like that. Not to put you on the spot, but telling us a little bit about that and how that works and how gamblers should try to take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, essentially, plus EV is just where you can determine that you have an advantage in the price, whether that's via market pricing and a huge difference to the market. I'm sure you guys will know there's certain bookmakers that are seen as very reputable, whether that's like a Pinnacle or a Circa now, where you can be fairly confident that their NBA line or their NFL line is really sharp and is generally going to inform the rest of the market. So, a positive EV bet could come from playing a big difference between a Pinnacle and then one of the smaller offshores or one of the more recreational, regulated books in the US. And essentially, it's just taking a price that reflects a positive return for you in the long term. So it's the equivalent of taking plus 105 on a coin flip. If you do that enough over the course of time, you will tend to win. And it's what most sort of sharp professional bettors are looking to do. And sometimes it's not glamorous and it can be small edge on your returns. And generally speaking, it's not going to be 5-6 leg parlays and these kind of bets. It's going to be under points in a college football game or taking a team with injury news in a WNBA or a CFL game. It can come from anywhere, and essentially it's just a case of getting the correct number, generally beating the closing line, which is a really good indicator of what the correct price was, because by that point in time, the line is solid. It's been hammered into shape by a lot of money exchanging hands on both sides. So betting early is a really good way to take some plus EV. Or looking for quick situations to take advantage of breaking news, players out with COVID, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Draymond last year, right, when he got out for that one, he destroyed DK. I mean the one thing that you mentioned was the coin flip, basically plus 105 on a coin flip. That's a great analogy, I guess would be the word, to kind of help people understand how that works. I mean, if I can get plus 105 on a coin flip, I'm taking that all day, because again, at the end of the day, it's 50-50, which is one reason I'm not a huge fan of soccer, because I always, that tie aspect overall is kind of what can screw you. Withdraw, no bet, I'm option, I'll put that on the table. But at the end of the day, with most American sports, it's either say it's the spread is -5.5 or +5.5. There's no third option to make it a 33%, spread out all the way out. If that makes sense. I'm just rambling now, I guess.
No, I completely get it.
I mean, especially for soccer, like, the odds of you tying in basketball are significantly smaller than tying in soccer just because of the score alone. And I think that's where the books get a lot of people because, even when I first started betting, it's, oh, there's no way, this is back then when, no way Real Madrid loses today or Barcelona and Real Madrid are both going to win. And you take the two heavy favorites, you may not even get plus money and you play them. One of them wins 6-0, one of them ties, or one of them, and you're just like, I feel like the books make so much money off those alone. And I cannot tell you how often I hear that, like every day. People still do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the tie is literally the bookmaker's best friend in Europe. As I mentioned at the start, you maybe the bookmaker will generally on, like, say, a Saturday, a busy soccer day, they'll have a spots list or a bogeys list or whatever you want to call it with the top 10 or 20 teams on the day that can put them in a real bind if they all win. And as I said, you're probably looking for 2 of the top 10 to tie or lose. And it's very difficult to have a losing day as the book in that kind of situation.
Yeah, 100%. So obviously we kind of learned about where you came from, but you're joining FlashPicks now. You've been with us for a while, especially on the European side, and you're coming into the American side as well. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what your plans are for FlashPicks?
Sure, yeah. So my main remit, I guess, is to assist alongside you guys and some of the other content creators that we've got there. Just distracted by your cat in the background.
That's what I deal with every day.
So
it's a daily thing.
So one of the things that they've looked to have me do early is fill in some gaps around NFL, whilst the likes of yourselves are concentrating more on the daily grind of basketball or baseball and giving picks out to our base around the more sort of current stuff. In the background, we still have a website there with an NFL section and an audience that want to come and read up-to-date stories. So I've written a few articles there around, like, post-draft, how the prices moved in the futures markets, award markets, and how they're sort of shaping up based on how rookies are looking and that kind of thing. And then from a soccer perspective, I think the business are really looking to someone who's from a European background and has more extensive history of pricing soccer matches up and betting on them as well, especially with the World Cup in mind and that sort of busy festive period of November through to New Year, where it's our hope that the US maybe take to soccer a little bit more, especially if the US men's team have a deep run in Qatar.
Yeah, let's call it how I see it. All right, they wanted a guy with a British accent to appease all us dumb Americans to make you think you know soccer. I get it, you do know soccer, but that's the reason. I know it is. I know you want to do NFL. I get it, but throw a British guy up there. Must know soccer.
Exactly.
Let's talk about football though. Anything else, Matt, that that I think we left off as far as getting a good sense of his background overall?
No, not in that aspect. No, but I think going along with his plus EV bets, I think the NFL is the best market to find those because not only is there such a long time in between when the line comes up and the amount of people that bet on it in let alone America. And I did want to ask this question. Do a lot of people in England bet on the NFL? Are they big fans? And are they fans of certain teams or they just want to bet it?
Yeah, it's been one of the big sort of growth stories in the UK in the last, say, 5, maybe 10 years. The main broadcaster over here, Sky Sports, have every single primetime game and they show them on delay as well the following day. So the audience is definitely growing. And then obviously the games coming over to London has really helped with that as well. The two biggest supported teams are Dolphins and 49ers, which probably kind of alludes to the age of the main sort of fan base. It's 33 30, 35 plus year old men generally, but there is a lot of younger people getting into the game, and a lot of the younger people are choosing the Jags, obviously with their association with London.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is whether the Jags are becoming popular over there just because of the amount of games they play, which sucks for them as far as schedule wise, but that's not mine.
They've got a pretty good record in London, though, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard Pat McAfee talk on it a little bit and how awful that trip is to have to do that throughout the week. Just take a week and basically go to London and try to prep for a game. Can't be.
It messes your sleep schedule too. You play like 9 a.m. like most of their time, especially on the East Coast. Like you're just like you're struggling.
Real quick, do Europeans and British people get upset with the soccer versus football debate as far as terminology? What are their thoughts on that? They call us idiots. That's what I feel.
I think most people in the UK will just refer to soccer as football and football as American football.
It's so much extra work.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 words in the place of one, isn't it? But yeah, I know if in the office, if I was to say football, there's only one sport people would think I was talking about, and it's unfortunately not gridiron.
There you go. No, that's what I kind of expected. I mean, we'll change them. It's got to be soccer. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Preseason football. You guys ready? Let's talk about some preseason football. It's obviously we had the Hall of Fame game happen last Thursday, something like that. But we do have a couple games tomorrow and one on Friday, and as well as this weekend that we can go over. First up would be Giants at Patriots. The line currently, let's check live line, is -3 for the Giants. We have the Patriots at +125. The over-under is at 33.5. Do you have any opinion on that game? It is preseason football, so guys, let's bet responsibly as always, but especially on preseason football because, again, it's preseason football. I don't know how many times I have to say that, but just make sure that's clear. What are your thoughts on the Giants at the Patriots for that game?
Do you want me to go first? Yeah, I was looking at Patriots, particularly once it hit 3. I've just been reading up on it shortly before we came on, and I think Mac Jones isn't going to play at all, judging by some of the stuff coming out of practice. It opened -2 Patriots, so like a 5-point move is fairly significant on such a low total as well. If I was going to play a side there, I'd probably have to play the Patriots, but that line movement does worry me. It sort of stinks of very few starters playing, and then obviously Dable probably wants to look at what he's got with the Giants. So yeah, I think underdogs typically have performed quite well in preseason just as a straight blind play. I was reading earlier, like over the last 20 years, they're covering sort of 53.5% of the time, and it's even more extreme in the last sort of couple of years since the preseason rules changed. So I would lean Patriots, but I think that the line movement definitely worries me and the sort of team news rumors that are coming out there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as game 1, how much does starters play a factor in your decision? I mean, because you got to think they're at least playing probably just 1 drive, maybe 2, nothing crazy for the first game, unless you have, a rookie or something like that you're really pushing out there and trying to get some playing time before the season. But what are your thoughts on that as far as playing a factor?
Yeah, that's the main angle I'll look for is QB, obviously with the importance they have to the team, and also kind of what the second string looks like. So, there's certain teams who have a reasonably strong quarterback room, and you can see the second string coming in and putting a decent drive himself together, and then sort of by halftime the team might be pretty competitive. So that's always one of the main things I would look for on a preseason game. And if you can find like first half splits or first quarter spreads, and they've just been derived purely from the game line. So if it's a +3.5 game and you can get +1.5, and the starter's going to play the first quarter, there's some interesting angles there, but I think most of the books have wisened up to it now. We found very few opportunities to bet on the Hall of Fame game. There was one book over here which had highest scoring half, and they just put it up pick'em. And obviously we knew Jags weren't starting Lawrence, so by the time they got the second half, you literally could have had me at quarterback.
So, what are your thoughts on the over/under? So I feel like everybody always says the under, and I've bet a lot of unders in preseason as well. But have you seen any stats on that, whether that's actually true, or have you, do you tend to play unders in the preseason, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I did last year. I think the lines have really corrected this year, and it's given me a bit of pause because you're looking generally 3-4 points lower. No overtime in preseason now either, so you can't get those like backdoor field goals to take you over the line, which has driven the total down even more. Yeah, it's a tough environment with totals. You've got to be probably quite brave to play these unders now. But looking at the data, it probably is still the sharper side.
Yeah, Matt, what do you think? This is your Giants. This is your team you rep. You love this team.
I'm a fan of the team. I hate this team. They should trade Saquon halfway through the season and get a bag of chips for him, and figure it out. This is the first year with new coach, new GM. Should be a test year, but they should rebuild and start now. As far as this preseason game, if I don't see Eli Manning against the Patriots, I'm gonna not bet the Giants. So, if he's there, which odds are he's not gonna hop out of retirement and play this preseason game, I think fading the Giants is always a good idea.
I'd say waiting till halfway in the season. Saquon will already be on the IR, so you should probably trade him before that.
We should have traded him 3 years ago. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Nonetheless, let's talk about the Titans at the Ravens. Ravens, the only favorite you can just automatically bet. 20 straight preseason wins. They're minus 190 right now versus the Titans. The line is at minus 3.5, and the over/under is at 31.5. What do you think about this this preseason streak? I mean, I guess there's some pride behind it, but who cares at the same time? But I don't know. I don't know what to think.
I think it's just a good indicator that they take the games semi-seriously. They're well coached. They've got a professional organization. I had a look earlier, and even though the record is so good, I probably wouldn't take the spread with it being more than a field goal. I just wouldn't get fancy, and I would just put them in every single bet on the money line and cash it. I think Lamar isn't going to play, but Huntley was reasonably capable at the back end of last year, and he should get some run. So yeah, I can't find a reason to bet against them. I think Titans are obviously going to ease the likes of Derrick Henry back in with him coming off injury. Robert Woods coming off injury. So I certainly can't see them keeping the starters in, even if they do sort of play them towards the start of the game. And like I said, Ravens are one of the best coached teams in the NFL, and I think that probably shows up in that record.
Yeah, it's the hook for me. It's the 0.5. That's what scares me. The 3 is okay, maybe a push, if it's close, or maybe you just clear it all together. But that 0.5 is what scares me away. Thoughts on that, Matt?
I don't know. I would slam the Ravens as much as a preseason game would, just because I'm reading about it too, and they're loving this record, and that nobody else cares about. That you're gonna they want to win again. They want to win. They don't really care about covering, but they want to win, and they've been saying they like the record. I think it's a good, whatever you want to call it, omen for the season or whatever. Which it's probably not, but they care about it. They're excited for it. They want to win these games. No one else does. If I'm going to bet a team that is going to try to win this game over a team that doesn't really care, I'm going to back the team that's going to try to win. Obviously, they may not do drastic things to try and win, but I think if it's somewhat tied, in the last couple of minutes, they may try to score a touchdown instead of settling for a field goal just to kind of make a statement in an unimportant game. I don't know. don't go crazy, but that's just the mindset I have. Like you have one team that cares, one team that doesn't.
Yeah.
Slam it, but don't go crazy. That's what that's. All right. One game I kind of want to talk about because there's a lot of hype around this Detroit Lions team is Friday's game. Falcons at Detroit. The line is -1 for the Falcons, plus 100 for the Lions, and the over/under is 35.5 currently on FanDuel. I mean, yes, it's hype, but I'm feeling the Lions. I'm feeling it. I mean, that's a coach that wants to go out there and just play smash mouth football, whether you're the first string or the fourth string, and he wants it all from you. So that's something I look for in preseason. 100% effort. That's the main thing. That and the Falcons are an absolute disaster from first string all the way down. Offensively, I would say, but I mean, just all over. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was reading up. I heard Campbell said he's going to have his starters play maybe a full quarter or close to it. That's what he said. I don't know if he's trying to throw smoke screens in preseason, but I don't think he would. If he does play and, they want to change their, narrative, maybe this Lions team needs to win a couple preseason games to feel – sometimes winning is kind of like a lifestyle, and you got to get a few to understand and get with the winning program, whether it's in a preseason game schedule or not. If that's what their goal is, like they were 3-13 last year, like maybe this kind of helps let them understand, hey, maybe we could do this. This feels good. Let's carry this into the season. Yeah, I would never touch the Falcons with a 60-foot pole in this entire season, let alone the preseason. So I'm all with you on the Lions.
But at the same time, because we've been stalling for Paul. Paul's back. Good to see you. At the same time, I feel like it's a trap. Paul, why don't you talk about a little bit like that? Because there's obviously a lot of hype. I don't know if you saw the video of him giving the pump up speech and then Jamal Williams going in the yeah. Gives you the tingles all over. But plus 100 for money line, it's basically a pick 'em, but plus 100. I mean, it seems like a little bit of a trap in an uncertain game.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the Falcons having this kind of QB contest as well, you're probably going to see like a reasonable amount of Mariota and Ridder, which I think Mariota's probably got a bit of a rough deal. Like he's not a terrible starter. Obviously, they're not going to be a great team by the looks of things, but I think he's a capable sort of starting QB. Could probably start for a better team in the league and do reasonably okay. But as you said, this team is going to just play for Dan Campbell. They're on Hard Knocks. It's not like when the Cowboys were on the show and they probably didn't care whether they would in preseason or not because they're a playoff team. This team wants to look good on national television, probably. So I'm edging towards the Lions here. One thing I probably looked at through all of these preseason games is if you can get teaser coupons with the book that you use, teasing some of these 1.5, 2.5 point dogs up with such low totals on the board could be a really good play just to get through that 3 and 7. You look at preseason, there's very few teams get blown out by more than 7 points in these sort of tight contests. We've already said you're probably on the right side anyway on the underdog, and it's just giving you that extra sort of security blanket. So I looked at Detroit in this one as a decent straight up play and probably a good first leg of a teaser. I've got 3 or 4 others that we can perhaps skim through and talk about adding to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, to remind people, we want to be looking for football numbers. So 3 and 7 are big football numbers. That's something you want to be aware of. So, obviously 2.5 versus 3.5, that's a huge difference. 6.5 versus 7.5, again, huge difference. But these are some things you want to be aware of, whether it's college football, NFL, it doesn't matter. Those are football numbers that you really, want to pay attention to. And these teasers, whether it's a 3-point teaser, 4, so on and so forth, believe it's up to 6. What are the teasers now? I haven't done one since last college football at the beginning of the year. So, I mean, I know FanDuel kind of opened it up. You can do negative teasers on FanDuel to really just make a crazy parlay or something like that. But I mean, what are the limits? It goes to 6.5 or?
Yeah, it's extremely varied now. I think it's the most common would be the 6-point teaser probably, but you can grab 7 points, or as you mentioned, the sort of reverse pleasers. I think FanDuel were calling them. But traditionally, you're looking at probably taking 6 points, and your 2-team teaser will probably pay around -120 to 110, depending on who your book is. So you're obviously grabbing those, as you mentioned, those key numbers. You want to go through a 3 or a 7, or ideally both, which is where these, like a 1.5 is a great dog line to tease up, because you end up with a +7.5 and cover both of those key numbers. So conversely, you don't really want to tease back through 0, because the odds of the tie are so remote that one of your 6 numbers that you're taking is pretty worthless to you. So you wouldn't really want to tease like a Atlanta -1 up to +5, because you're only really getting the +3 as your big number that you're gaining there. Whereas with Detroit, you're getting a much bigger edge. So just one of those kind of, for anyone who wants to bet on preseason, and we talked about EV before, if you just want to feel like you're getting the best of things, take some of these dogs that are 1.5 point underdog and tease them up through past 7, or including 7 for the push at the least.
I think you brought up a good point as far as a dead number there. So in a scenario like that, let's run through one just to kind of educate and help people, when they're making their teasers. So say you do let's do Ravens -3.5. That's going to be a popular one overall. What would you do as far as that scenario if you wanted to tease it, or would you just leave it alone altogether and maybe look at money line or some other, just not have it in there altogether?
Yeah, if you were looking at the Ravens, the only real number you're going to gain back there is the win by less than a field goal, and you're paying too much of a penalty to take that, because the other numbers that you're teasing through, essentially you're going to add 6 onto the previous total that you were getting. So you'll take your 3.5 and add 6 to that number, and so you're not actually getting through a plus field goal on the other side. In that instance, you're ending up at +2.5 on the Ravens. So you're not covering enough big numbers to pay the tax on the teaser price.
Is there any number as far as minus is concerned that you really you're comfortable teasing, whether it be -1, 2, so on and so forth, or maybe like a -6 to get it to just money line or something like that?
Yeah, so I'd be looking for 6 or bigger, ideally. Given obviously the 0, it's not the same as betting the money line. So you would obviously lose on a tie in that instance. So yeah, you want to take these teams that are probably -7.5, tease them down to -1.5. So you're getting those 3 and 7 point victories. It's basically the inverse of if you like a dog and you want to tease them up, you want to try and get 3 and 7 in your favor, and if you like a favorite, you want to try and tease them down past the 7 and the 3. Really, are the sort of main plays. And obviously, the lower the total, the more those points are worth to you. So on a big college, Pac-12 game that's in for 70 points, the variance is a lot higher. So those 6 points aren't worth as much to you. Whereas on a Jets v Dolphins game in December in bad weather in New York, that's 41 point total, that can be quite meaningful, getting 6 points through the 3 and the 7.
Yeah, and then again, real quick, I just want to go over really everything is the same thing as far as spreads. We want to look at the over and unders. So again, football numbers would be 35, 42, 48, so on and so forth. And then obviously you can do the combinations of 3, 24. There's a bunch of numbers that you want to, make sure you're paying attention to, because 35.5 is a huge difference between 34.5, and so on and so forth. So again, these guys, this is stuff you want to make sure you're up to date on and you're comfortable with, and you're doing a little math in your head as to what combinations of scores it could be. when you're betting your overs and unders as well. Sorry, I just want to put that in there real quick. You said you had a couple other games. Do you want to build a little teaser? No pressure. No pressure.
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay. How long would you like to make it?
Well, I'll give another 4 teams out, and people can make their minds up on how many they include.
So Detroit would be the first one.
Yeah, put the Lions in first.
And what are we doing, a +6?
Yeah, so did you say current line +1?
Yes, so it'd be a +7 on that.
Yeah. Next one I looked at was Jacksonville. They're getting 1.5 points against the Browns. Trevor Lawrence will play in this one. Browns have said Deshaun Watson will be available, but he might be suspended by this point in time. And I can't imagine they're going to leave him out there too long, given how embattled he is at the minute. So that looked like a good one. Jags have obviously had a bit of a tune-up last week as well. So yeah, they're probably a little bit ahead of Cleveland in the sort of time frame as well. So I'd expect them to be competitive enough, getting 7.5 if you tease that one up. The other 3 I looked at were Green Bay are getting 2.5. Obviously, Rodgers is going to be nowhere near this one, but equally, Lance will probably start, but Garoppolo's being wrapped up in cotton wool. So Jordan Love's probably got something to prove for Green Bay. Can see you nodding along for that one, Nick. Yeah,
Jordan Love. That's what I mean. When you have these like prove it guys, that's what I look for as far as preseason. So great point there. That's at 2.5 still. So again, another good number.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Next 2 are both getting 1.5 points. So again, we're getting up past 7 to 7.5. We've got Carolina getting 1.5 points against Washington. You out on that one?
Out. It's going to be a blowout. So we do. We have like a good shitty players. So I don't know, man. No, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, like I said, these are the shopping lists. You can choose which ones you like. My point there was just Baker and Darnold. Obviously, both probably going to get a bit of time in that one. And then I think they drafted. Was it Matt Corral they drafted as well?
I think so.
Panthers. They definitely took a QB in the draft as well. So they're going to have 3 QBs who all probably want to put a good drive together.
Yeah, the Panthers.
And then the next one was.
Go ahead. Sammy Howell. That's what I'm saying for the Washington. No, I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's the one, yeah. Saved me there, didn't you? And then Texans getting 1.5 against the Saints. This one worries me a little bit because Andy Dalton's going to probably start for New Orleans and obviously quite experienced, reasonable level. But again, you've got Davis Mills, Kyle Allen's, he's been around the league. And it's just that key number. You're getting up past 7.5 again. So the last 2, Panthers and Texans, probably my least favorite. If I was sort of putting a confident treble together, I'd say Lions, Jags, Packers, probably.
Yeah. So Lions would be +7. The Jags would be +7.5, and Green Bay would be +8.5. If you wanted to add a couple more, Panthers +7.5, and then what was the last one?
Texans +7.5 as well.
I hate betting on the Texans, no matter what.
I mean, I won't blame people for leaving them out.
I mean, their first team is so bad, I couldn't imagine their second and third team. That's all I'm saying on my end. So, Matt, thoughts on that? Any? I know you're a huge preseason guy.
No, I'm not. I'm not a huge preseason guy. That's what we have FlashPicks Paul for. He could do all that for me. I'm going to keep
of preseason.
Yeah, no, he could take that. I don't know. It's a different kind of human being right there.
There you go.
I wouldn't usually do this amount of research, but I didn't want to let you down on my first pod visit. So.
I appreciate it. What would your NFL team be? Do you have a team?
I've flipped around a bit, sort of early days, because it was basically whoever I was betting on. I was a big Falcons man in my early days because that was when they were kind of knocking on the door of the Super Bowl, and I was on them in the futures a few times. But now that Raiders have gone back to Las Vegas, that's probably my my team now, with me being a fan of visiting the desert.
Okay, so that's that was my next question is, what's the story behind that? So, I mean, who isn't a fan of Vegas as far as if you're a gambler? So I don't blame you at all there. But let's talk about soccer. That's why we brought you on, because you're British. We need somebody to educate us on some good old soccer. I mean, EPL. I mean, that's the most popular league going on right now. I know you have some experience in that as well. Matt, are you a big soccer fan? Because I don't.
No, soccer against too much for me. I actually coached soccer, played soccer my whole life. Understand the game, but there's so many leagues and so many relegations that it's just like my brain is so much going on with the 32 football teams, the 30 basketball teams, 30 baseball teams, even 30 hockey teams, that like to add multiple leagues and keeping up with the relegations. I do like how soccer works in that aspect with, the losers get punished pretty badly. I think it keeps the league honest, but it's too much for me. I'll let the Europeans handle it. Again, that's why we have Paul here. Preseason and soccer is all he's got. No, I understand some players, but I'm not really in depth with like scheduling and all that. So I'm just going to leave it to him.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. Paul, I wanted to ask you something. Growing up as a little British boy, what was your favorite team? I'm sorry, I couldn't get it out. What was your favorite team growing up?
So Matt set this up quite nicely, talking about relegation, because my team are Bolton Wanderers, who are currently playing in the third tier of English football. So that's probably double A in your money.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And they basically nearly went bankrupt and had to be bought out by a local businesswoman after being relegated. But, it's not that many years ago that they were playing Bayern Munich in the Europa League. So soccer is a crazy sport in that sense. But yeah, it's cruel on fans when their team just completely falls off the face of the earth.
Yeah, you think Athletic fans and Reds fans and all these other teams have it bad. Think about that,
Well, because you think about it, there's no rebuilding. You can't tank to get the first draft pick because that sucks.
You need money.
You need a billionaire from UAE or Saudi Arabia or somewhere.
Where did he go? Sheffield United? No. Where did he go?
Who?
Newcastle have been bought by the Saudis.
They're dumping money over there. But let's get into the slate a little bit. So let's talk about one thing, because it popped out to me being a FIFA fan, just playing FIFA. That's about as much soccer as I get into, mainly because, like Matt said, who has the time to do a regular job at this point? Maybe when I don't have a job, I'll gladly hop into that a little bit more. But Man U, it's kind of a train wreck. Ronaldo wants out. They're playing Brentford, and Man U's minus 105. So, like, just looking name recognition, that just pops off the page. What are your thoughts on Man U overall and how, they're just falling apart?
Yeah. They're in a world of pain, and they weren't great in the first game against Brighton, who probably a slightly better team than Brentford, but they came into Old Trafford and won fairly convincingly. There weren't many good signs for Man United. It does look a good number, and it kind of ties in with one of the sort of pieces of advice I was basically going to give around betting on soccer. The 1x2, which is the equivalent of the money line for us, but with the tie built in, where you can bet on either the 1, which is the home team, the X, which is the tie, or the 2, which is the away team. It's such a sharp market. It's bet heavily into in Asia by a lot of the syndicates, so it's very difficult to get an edge. But one of the times where you might get one is early in the season, where there's these overreactions to week 1, and that's kind of the theme I've looked at this week. And if if you're that way inclined, you could probably look at Man United this week and say that they're probably being a little bit disrespected going away to Brentford and being almost even money. Brentford themselves weren't great in the first game. They came back from 2-0 down against Leicester and scored a couple of late goals, which probably glossed over their performance. So I can see people looking at that and thinking it's a big price this week, but they're such a trappy team at the minute, Manchester United. Like, you don't know what's going to happen with Ronaldo. They're being linked with different players every day in the press over here. So yeah, I can understand the price standing out to people, but there's a lot of red flags around that team at the minute.
Yeah, I really wish our old producer was here, Corey. Huge Man United fan. Love to shit on him when he's around because he just is hell. But yeah, it seems trappy. That's my thought. Like, it's like, come take this. Just take it, which we'll see. Again, early in the season, I think I do agree with you as far as that. That's with any sport, really. You start to develop and see how teams are doing, and lines get sharper as the year goes along, and stats and statistics and all that stuff come out. So, but I know you had a couple games that you wanted to go over. Arsenal versus Leicester.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little about that and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, so kind of continuing that theme. As I said, Leicester were 2-0 up and looking quite comfortable against Brentford. And Arsenal had a really strong performance away at Crystal Palace, which is the kind of game that they have traditionally struggled in. Night game, pretty partisan crowd. Like Palace, for those who don't follow soccer that closely, are sort of renowned in the Premier League for having quite a hardcore fan base, making the quite a difficult place to go to. And Arsenal came through that test quite well, but I just feel like the public are all over them. They've signed Man City striker Gabriel Jesus, and there's a lot of steam around him. I don't know how big like fantasy Premier League is in the US, but it's essentially like a season-long fantasy game for EPL. And Jesus is like at 70% ownership. So if you equate that to like a DFS NFL slate, you can sort of see the steam that he's got around him. So I think Leicester are a decent bet here, perhaps on one of the handicap lines. I know you mentioned about hating the tie earlier. Maybe have a look at Asian handicap going forward. There's a good market. So yeah, you can take Leicester plus a full goal basically, and you'd get a push if they lose by a goal. I think that's like small plus money, maybe like plus 110, something like that. I think that might be.
Real quick, if you want to explain Asian handicap for people that don't understand what that is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So there's 3 elements to it. There's the half goal handicaps, which you can just equate to the same as a two-way spread in an NFL. So that can be like minus half a goal, minus 1.5 goals, 2.5, etc. Then there's the full goal lines, which again, very, very similar to an NFL, like flat 3 line, or where you can have a push if the game finishes on a 3. But then they also introduced like the quarter ball handicap, which is where it gets a little bit more complex. But essentially, if you bet on a team minus 1.25 goals, you're essentially splitting half of your stake on -1 and half of your stake on -1.5. So $100 bet minus 1.25 is essentially $50 -1 and $50 -1.5, both at the same odds. So it just creates, it's the fairest way of handicapping football because of the lower scoring games and
soccer.
Sorry, yeah, first one. $5 in the jar. Strike one. Yeah. So you could take Leicester in this game plus 1.25, for example, at -120. I think that is, and you would be getting half of your bet pushed if they lose by 1, and the other half would win.
I mean, what are your thoughts on like draw no bet? Because that seems to be kind of popular at least from what I do it sometimes, and I've seen some of my friends do it. A friend brought it up to me as far as a possible option, just because in FanDuel in particular, A lot of these teams, if they have like additional time, the 15 minutes, so on and so forth, then it's a straight up loss. If you're just doing money line tie, well, it's really just money line each side. So the draw no bet kind of takes that away. What are your thoughts on that as far as an option?
Yeah, so draw no bet is essentially just the zero Asian handicap. It's the same market, and it is doing exactly what you say there. It's just taking the odds of the tie away. Generally, I would always push anyone to look at any of these Asian handicap style markets, just because you're generally paying a little bit less juice as well than you would into the three-way market. So albeit you're allowing for the push, you're generally going to get slightly less juice to the book. So yeah, sometimes a good one if you're looking to take a small dog, but you just want to allow for the possibility of the tie. But yeah, it's draw no bet has just evolved from the Asian handicap, as it's just the zero Asian handicap line.
Yeah, awesome. Matt, why don't you go into the next game? And because I know you're a big soccer fan. Come on. Who's a soccer fan? No? All right. Wolves at Fulham. I know you have a couple plays for that, so we'll go right back to Paul. Matt will just be here trying to get paid and be quiet the whole episode.
So I think I think it's Fulham at Wolves.
Excuse me.
If I'm not mistaken. I'll double check that while we talk. But yeah, this is one where, again, you can perhaps just look to play narrative a little bit. Fulham played in the curtain raiser of their season against Liverpool and played really well. Alexander Mitrovic, their Serbian striker, scored a couple of goals and terrorised Liverpool. Wolves went to Leeds and lost, but looking at the stats for that game, they were the dominant side, really. They were the away side in that game. And they're a really solid Premier League team. They've been in the league a long time. Quite a low-scoring team, but very good defensively. And the money line odds for this weekend of like plus 140 pretty much suggest that the market sees them as very similar in ability to Fulham, which I think is probably a little bit disrespectful after 1 week. So I'd be taking Wolves there in their first home game against Fulham, who will have been really hyped up for that Liverpool game and will have put a lot into it. And I think Wolves are a good bet at plus 140 there.
Yeah. No, I'm all about plus money, so you don't have to talk me into that. Last one I have on our list, and we can go over any more that you wanted to as well. Tottenham versus Chelsea. I don't know who's home and away. It's Tottenham at Chelsea. Chelsea at Tottenham. Excuse me. Chelsea at Tottenham, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So this one, I don't have a money line or a handicap bet, but it's been played on the Sunday. It's at Chelsea. These two teams, obviously, it's London rivalry. It's generally a high card game. So I know we talked a little bit before we came on air about the sort of player prop markets on soccer, and these are where you can generally find a little bit of an edge. Even if you just go to one of the odds comparison sites and look at the difference in prices between books, you can sometimes just pick these off. They're being priced very differently. There isn't a main provider that sort of sets the line for these. So the likes of FanDuel, Bet365, who obviously have a US presence now, that they'll all bet these slightly differently, and you can look to pick up some big differences in price. So yeah, I'd expect this game to be reasonably high card quote. There should be 5 or 6 bookings in the game. And there's a midfielder for Spurs, Rodrigo Bentancur, who I think is a little bit overpriced. If you can grab sort of plus 275 or bigger on him, sort of check around the books that you use. I think he's a good bet for a card. As I said, it should be a bit attritional. Spurs are likely to be the sort of underdog as the away team, having to sort of play on the back foot a little bit, and he's going to have to sort of get stuck in the midfield. So that was my pick on that game. I just think just want to mention, and as I said, player to be shown a card is a good market to sort of get yourself involved in if you're just a casual fan who's looking to get into soccer or have a bit of interest on the games. There's some really good Twitter follows. There's a lot of people looking at these player card props and doing a lot of research on them. So good one to pick up on.
Yeah, that sounds exciting.
I think the biggest part for Americans is that we love scoring. That's why I like basketball, football, American football. Like there's a lot of points scored, whereas like soccer, it's a lot of unless you love the game, it's like baseball. Unless you love the game and you enjoy how the game is played, I root when I watch baseball for a 1-0 perfect game. But the average fan wants to see a 13-12 home run derby, basically. Same with soccer. They don't want to watch a 0-0 game of close calls. It's close down the stretch. They want to see 6-5 with 5 goals, someone with a bicycle kick and a hat trick. So that's the biggest hurdle that I think soccer, they can't really figure it out, right? Because it's like you can't change the game to add stuff for more scoring. It just doesn't make sense. So that's, I think, the biggest reason why Americans don't watch it. But who knows? Maybe as more kids stop playing American football and move to soccer, maybe you'll see more people enjoy it. And if they can bet on it now, I know that's helped. Whereas, we're only a couple years into America being able to bet on it. I think if you have people being able to bet on it, and I do think this 2022 World Cup is a huge, I don't know what the word is, not a milestone, but indicator, like, because the USA always gets into the World Cup. They always like to find teams, root for them, root for America. And then I think if they get addicted to the betting on soccer, because now they can bet on it, and I don't even know how many states that we're at now that are legalized. I think if you have people that like the feeling, like watching it, and they're like, oh, this is fun, it may carry over a lot better after or post World Cup than what we've seen in the past.
Let's turn the tables on you. I know obviously you're new to Twitter. We want to make sure everybody follows Paul at FlashPicks Paul on Twitter. Anything you want to promote or talk about right now? This is your time.
Yeah, just as you said, very, very new to Twitter as a bookmaker. You're probably not trying to make yourself too public in the Twitter world. So yeah, I've started that account. Really looking to engage with people in the US, talk about stuff they want me to talk about, write articles that they're interested in reading. So, I'm fully sort of looking forward to having interaction with the audience on that account. It's still quite a small following at the minute, but appreciate anyone who wants to follow the account and ask any questions. The inbox is open for betting related stuff, any sort of expansion on the stuff we've talked about here, or any other markets that people want to sort of rack my brains on. More than happy to do that. And then on the UK side of things, as I mentioned, we've started a couple of new accounts to follow. One of them is specifically just player carded stuff, and that account's called The Card Dealer on Twitter. So if anyone wants to follow that account as well, we'll be putting all our picks up there, and you can get those at some of the US-facing books now, the likes of Bet365, Unibet, FanDuel, because they just take the prices from Betfair and Paddy Power over this side of the pond. So there'll be a few options to get your money down on there. And if you have a look back on the feed, we've only recently started it, but we've had some decent results so far.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to definitely follow that. Yeah. Paul, I feel like I've learned so much today, and hopefully the viewers has as well. I mean, it's great to have you on and have a little different insight as to, the betting world, because it's such a complicated, sphere. There's gamblers, there's casual, there's experts, and obviously behind the scenes as far as, you guys setting lines. So thank you again for coming on. Matt, thank you again for showing up. It's always a pleasure. Boom.
No problem.
Anything left? It's been a great episode. We will see you again on Friday. So join us then. Deuces.
Peace.